Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're taking a really close look at the moon. You know, that big familiar thing up in the sky we all think we know pretty well.
Right.
But the sources we've gathered for this deep dive, they suggest maybe, just maybe, a lot of what we assume is, well, wrong. What if it's far, far stranger than conventional science has ever really told us?
Exactly. We're diving into what's often called the hollow moon theory. It basically asks, could the moon not be natural at all? Could it be
Well, artificial,
engineered?
and the sources we have are honestly fascinating. We've got scientific observations, actual Apollo mission data, and then some really eyebrow-raising quotes from very respected scientists.
Okay, so our mission today is to unpack all of this, pull out the most intriguing bits, the real nuggets of information, and help you navigate some of this stuff because honestly, some of it seems contradictory.
It can, yeah. It's all about getting some new insights into this object they see literally every night, but maybe don't truly know. Okay, let's get into it. So, one of the moments that really seems to have kicked off a lot of this thinking, it happened during the Apollo 12 mission. This was back in '69.
Right, November 69.
The astronauts, as part of their experiments, they deliberately crashed a part of their lunar module, the ascent stage, back onto the moon's surface.
Yeah, a controlled impact.
Yeah.
They wanted to measure the seismic waves, understand the moon's interior structure better.
But what actually happened? Well, it wasn't quite what anyone expected.
No, not at all. The result was just anomalous. According to, I think it was Alan Bean, one of the astronauts on Apollo 12, or maybe relayed later, the moon rang like a bell for hours after.
It rang like a bell, our moon.
Yeah, imagine that, like striking a huge gong. And Ken Johnson, he was the supervisor of the data and photo control department back then, he described it in even more detail. He said after that impact, the moon didn't just ring like a bell, it wobbled in such a precise way that it was almost as though it had gigantic hydraulic damper struts inside of it.
Whoa, hang on. Gigantic hydraulic damper struts
That's the quote.
inside the moon. That sounds like something straight out of science fiction.
It does, doesn't it? But this was the observation based on the seismic data they got back.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a weird little echo.
It was a profound seismic reaction that, well, it must have made people immediately question what the moon is actually made of.
Absolutely. If it reverberates like that, like a hollow metal sphere,
Yeah.
well, what else don't we know?
And here's where it gets really interesting, because that bell ringing thing, it wasn't just a one-off weird event.
No.
Turns out, many very highly respected scientists, academics, they've expressed, let's say, serious confusion about the moon's existence and its basic properties for a long time.
Well, absolutely. When you start digging into the quotes, you find this recurring theme of just deep scientific puzzlement. Like, how is this thing even here? Take Robin Brett, for example, a NASA scientist. He famously said, quote, "It seems easier to explain the non-existence of the moon than its existence."
Wow. From a NASA scientist, that's pretty blunt. Easier to explain it not existing.
Yeah, it speaks volumes about how difficult it is to fit the moon into standard models of planetary formation.
What specifically was so baffling? Was it just the existence or something more?
Well, others struggled with just how big it is compared to Earth. Isaac Asimov, the famous science writer and biochemist,
Yeah.
he put it like this: "We cannot help but come to the conclusion that the moon by rights ought not be there." His point was, Earth is relatively small, gravitationally speaking. It shouldn't really have captured or formed such a massive satellite. The moon's diameter, 2,160 miles? Asimov called it a freak of nature.
Right, because most moons are tiny compared to their planet.
Exactly. Ours is disproportionately huge.
So, for people looking at the hollow moon idea, that size difference isn't just weird, it's like Exhibit A.
Pretty much. It suggests maybe it didn't form with Earth, maybe it was. Well, put there.
Okay, so existence and size are puzzling, but what about what's inside it? Did the weirdness stop at the surface?
Not even close. Dr. D.L. Anderson, a geophysics professor at Caltech, he looked at the data and said the moon seems to be made inside out.
Inside out, what does that even mean?
He meant its inner and outer compositions seem flipped. Like the denser materials you'd expect deep inside are closer to the surface, and vice versa. It's backwards.
Okay.
And adding to that, Lon Hood from the University of Arizona, he focused on the core. He noted, "We knew that the moon's core was small, but we didn't know it was this small." He felt this really underscored the idea that the moon's origin is unique and unlike any other terrestrial body.
A tiny core. Or maybe no real solid core like other planets. That definitely feeds the hollow idea, doesn't it?
It does. It's hard to square with how we think planets and large moons form.
Did other experiments, like the orbiters, give any clues about this internal structure?
They certainly added to the mystery. Dr. Sean C. Sullivan from MIT, he looked at lunar orbiter data and said it indicated the frightening possibility that the moon might be hollow.
Frightening possibility, wow.
Yeah. And Dr. Gordon McDonald at NASA, he apparently got similar data. He initially thought his instruments must be wrong, but after checking, he concluded it would seem that the moon is more like a hollow than a homogeneous sphere. The data just didn't fit a solid ball model.
So the data kept pointing that way, even when scientists doubted it initially.
And then there's Farouk El-Baz, also NASA. He talked about observations of water vapor seemingly coming from inside the moon. He said if that's happening, it means there is a drastic distinction between the different phases of the lunar interior, that the interior is quite different from what we have seen on the surface. Again, suggesting it's not uniform inside.
Okay, so we've got scientists struggling with evidence suggesting the moon is inside out, has a tiny core, might be hollow. It's not just questioning how it formed, but fundamentally what it is.
Exactly. And that led some people to ask the really out there questions. Back in 1970, two Russian scientists, Vorysin and Sherbakov,
Yeah,
you just put it out there. Is the moon a creation of alien intelligence?
straight to the point.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And even Nobel laureate Dr. Harold Urey, the chemist, he expressed being terribly puzzled by the rocks from the moon, and in particular their titanium content. We'll probably get back to that titanium thing.
Right, and Carl Sagan, maybe the most famous science communicator ever,
Sagan, yeah.
he stated it very, very simply. A natural satellite cannot be a hollow object.
Right. The implication being if it is hollow, which some data seem to suggest.
And then it can't be natural, period. That's a huge challenge.
It's the core challenge, really. And maybe the most, let's say, extreme summary came from Erwin Shapiro at Harvard and the Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics.
What did he say?
Get this. He said, the best possible explanation for the moon is observable error. The moon doesn't exist.
He said the moon doesn't exist as a way of explaining the data.
Sort of tongue-in-cheek, maybe, but highlighting the impossibility. He went on to describe it as bigger than it should be, apparently older than it should be, and much lighter in mass than it should be. Plus, it occupies an unlikely orbit and is so extraordinary that all existing explanations for its presence are fraught with difficulties, and none of them could be considered remotely watertight.
Wow. So if you put all these quotes together, Nobel winners, NASA scientists, astrophysicists, the pattern is undeniable.
Yeah.
They're all saying, in different ways, something is deeply, fundamentally weird about our moon. Conventional science just struggles to explain it.
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is it's not just the big picture stuff like does it exist or is it hollow? There are specific concrete anomalies about the moon that really seem to bolster this idea of it being, well, engineered, designed.
Okay, like what specific things?
Well, you mentioned the rocks Urey was puzzled by.
Yeah, the titanium.
We'll get to that. But first, think about other things found in lunar rocks. Our sources point to processed metals, things like brass, mica,
Yeah.
and get this, uranium-236 and neptunium-237.
Okay, brass and mica sound weird enough, but uranium-236, neptunium-237, aren't those nuclear material?
Bingo. That's the
Yeah.
crucial part. U-236 is essentially radioactive nuclear waste. It's found in spent nuclear fuel.
Mm-hmm.
And neptunium-237, it's a radioactive metallic element, and it's a byproduct of nuclear reactors in making plutonium.
So, stuff you make in reactors.
Exactly. The key point our sources emphasize is these isotopes do not occur naturally. They are man-made, or at least technology-made.
So what on Earth, or rather what on the moon are they doing there?
That is the billion-dollar question, isn't it? It's not just a little odd. Finding nuclear byproducts really challenges the natural object idea. It points strongly towards something artificial.
Okay, that's pretty strange. What other anomalies are there? You mentioned the core earlier.
Right. So our sources stress that unlike basically every other planetary body we know of, Earth's moon doesn't seem to have a substantial solid core.
Which we already said is weird.
And add to that its age. The moon is apparently older than the Earth.
Older? How much older?
About 4.6 billion years old, give or take. That makes it nearly 800,000 years older than Earth itself.
Wait, how can a satellite be older than the planet it orbits? That doesn't make any sense in a natural formation scenario.
It really doesn't. It completely decouples the moon's origin from Earth's formation. And again, for the hollow moon proponents, this makes perfect sense if it wasn't formed here but arrived later.
And the lack of a solid core fits that narrative too.
You could argue that an engineered structure wouldn't necessarily need or have a molten, rotating core like a natural planet does.
Okay. Age, core, weird elements. What else? The orbit came up earlier.
Ah, yes, the orbit. This is maybe one of the most compelling arguments for the place theory.
Yeah.
It's just incredible. It's the only moon in our entire solar system that has a stationary, nearly perfect circular orbit.
Stationary meaning tidally locked. Always showing the same face.
Yes, tidally locked, but also the orbit itself is remarkably circular, not elliptical like most natural orbits tend to be, especially after potential capture events.
And it doesn't spin on its axis in the same way other natural bodies do?
Right. Our sources say it does not spin like a natural celestial body. Its characteristics just don't match any other moon we've observed.
That level of precision, it feels almost too perfect to be random chance, doesn't it?
It really does. The odds of achieving that exact orbit naturally are considered astronomically low by proponents of this theory, which leads them back to the idea it was deliberately placed.
Okay, now let's circle back to that titanium Harold Urey was puzzled by.
Right, the titanium. Astronauts brought back moon rocks, analyzed them, and were baffled to find they contained about 10 times more titanium than even the most titanium-rich rocks we find here on Earth.
10 times more. That's a huge difference. Why would the moon be so rich in titanium?
Conventional explanations really struggle with that. But the hollow moon theory, it offers a pretty neat explanation.
Which is?
The theory suggests the moon isn't just hollow, but that the inner shell, the structure beneath the surface, is made of or heavily reinforced with titanium, possibly forming an inner core or layer.
An inner titanium shell.
Exactly. And the reason we find so much titanium in the surface rocks, millions, maybe billions of years of meteorite impacts, these impacts would chip away at that inner titanium layer, blasting fragments of it onto the surface and mixing it with the regolith, the lunar soil.
Huh. So the surface abundance is actually evidence of a hidden inner structure being pulverized over eons.
That's the idea. It connects the surface composition puzzle directly to the proposed internal structure.
Okay, that ties that up neatly, if the theory holds. And finally, what about its position relative to us?
Our sources highlight the moon's precise position. It's at just the right altitude, on the right course, moving at the right speed to have the effects it does on Earth tides, stabilizing our axis, and maybe most strikingly, being the exact right size and distance to perfectly cover the sun during a solar eclipse.
That perfect eclipse alignment is pretty amazing.
It is. And all these factors together, the orbit, the distance, the speed, led proponents to argue it seems fine-tuned, suggesting again it was intentionally placed into its current orbit.
So the ringing, the weird elements, the age, the lack of core, the perfect orbit, the titanium, it's a lot of anomalies piling up.
It really is. Taken together, they paint a picture of something deeply unconventional, something that consistently defies standard astronomical explanations. They form the bedrock of the argument that the moon might be an artifact, not an accident.
Which brings us neatly to, well, what's happening now? Because people aren't just looking anymore, are they? They're planning to go back and maybe even dig.
Exactly. Our sources bring up Moon Express. It's a private company based in Florida. And their plan, to actually mine the moon, initially looking for things like helium-3, which could be a future fuel source.
So this isn't just science anymore. This is commercial.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Moon Express has made some serious strides. They got the funding for their first trip. They were a front runner for that Google Lunar X Prize, the $20 million prize for the first private team to land, move, and send back pictures.
Okay.
And maybe most importantly, they became the very first private company ever to get permission from the U.S. government, specifically the FAA, to travel beyond Earth's orbit and land on the moon.
That feels huge. A private company getting the okay to go to the moon. What's the significance of that? Why now?
It's extremely significant. Our sources speculate a bit here. If Moon Express is open and transparent about what they find, their mining could give us a first-hand view of what is underneath the soil. We could get totally new data, maybe data relevant to this whole hollow moon discussion from a non-governmental source.
I think it'd be game-changing.
It could. Is it, as some sources suggest, the government trying to show it has nothing to hide by ending its monopoly on space? Or perhaps are there still controls? Maybe restrictions on exactly where they can land or what kinds of images or data they're allowed to send back, especially if past missions did encounter, as some theories suggest, structures and anomalous activity.
Right, the idea that maybe previous missions saw things that weren't made public.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Either way, the fact that private companies now have the green light to go and potentially to dig,
Hmm.
it definitely changes the landscape of lunar exploration and what we might learn.
Okay, so let's try and pull these threads together. We've covered a lot today.
We have.
We started with that really unsettling bell-like ringing during Apollo 12.
Yep, the wobbling too.
Right. Then the
Yeah.
sheer number of scientists puzzled by its very existence, its size, its composition,
The inside-out comments, the tiny core.
the impossibly perfect circular orbit, the presence of those unnatural processed elements like uranium-236, neptunium-237,
Nuclear byproducts, yeah.
its surprising age being older than Earth, the high titanium content possibly pointing to an inner shell.
Hey, quite a list.
It really is. So when you take all these characteristics together, what's the takeaway?
Well, the clear takeaway from the sources we've looked at is that the moon's existence, its composition, its orbit, they remain incredibly hard to explain using our standard scientific models. These collected facts, or perhaps strongly suggested anomalies, push us to think outside the conventional box. They force us to consider possibilities that might sound strange at first.
And now, looking ahead, we've got these private missions, like Moon Express, literally planning to dig down deep under the lunar surface.
Right, the potential for new discoveries is huge.
So it leaves us with a final thought, really, a provocative one for you to consider. If these missions do start digging, and they do find something truly unexpected beneath that familiar gray facade, how might that change everything? Our understanding of the moon, sure, but maybe even our understanding of our own place in the universe. What would you expect them to find down there?